Digital drums. Let's do this. What's up guys, how's it going? Today we're taking a bit of a detour from where we usually go, which is guitars, and today we're going to be looking at budget electric drum kits. More specifically, the Alesis DM10. I was after a drum kit to sort of practice on quietly. Already had two acoustic kits, so I wanted to get something that I could use as silently as possible so I didn't piss off the neighbours, and I wanted something that I could also use for triggering in Logic. So did a bit of research, figured that I could afford at the time a DM6, which is, it's quite a good module. The only thing is, the wiring loom at the back is all fed into one block, and I was thinking, maybe one day I'd want to use the brain unit for other tasks, in which case I couldn't use, the wiring block that came with it. So what I ended up doing was I went into PMT in Manchester, and I was looking at the DM6 and sort of umming and ahhing about it. And while the guy was sort of trying to tell me about its features, I turned around and spotted a DM10 for, I think it was 50 quid less. The DM6 at the time was 380, and I think I paid 330 for the DM10 second hand. The reason that it was priced so low is that it didn't have the power adapter, and two of the brackets were actually snapped. The whole thing was pretty close to falling apart. It had been well used. So, after a little bit of decision making, I decided I'd go for the DM10. I was going to get more use out of it. I was going to, sort of get a better feel out of it, because I was using 3 toms at the time. But with electric kits, you can change what what each of the pads do. So the fact that it comes with 4 toms, and I can use one of them as a cowbell or whatever, is really useful. Especially as I was using a lot of cymbals at the time. The DM10 only comes with 4 cymbals, the DM6 only comes with 3. This is the studio version, which comes with the black steel frame. There was a pro version that came with, I think it was a chrome frame, and there was a sort of top level version that came with like real feel cymbals, which were really interesting to look at because they looked like regular cymbals, just slightly thicker, but you'd hit them and they'd feel like hard rubber, which is what these are. Now, the DM10 has got some fantastic features. The cymbals that come with it actually have choke zones, which is when you hit them, you can grab them afterwards and choke the cymbal. And it's not useful for some people, but I drum in a band, and for a couple of the songs, it is something that I use quite a lot. It just adds a little bit of variation in what you can do. The hi-hat is great, it's very responsive, hooked up to a foot pedal, and as soon as you slam that foot pedal down, you've got to close on the hi-hat. The ride is probably the most interesting one. It's got 3 zones, so it's got the bell, it's got the centre, and it's got the edge. They all give very different sounds, and it's the same across all cymbals. The harder you hit them, the louder they are. It's different samples ranging all the way from quiet to loud, so it's, you're getting a full spectrum. It's one of the most realistic responding drums, electric kits anyway, that I've ever used. I have used some Rolands in the past, some really top end stuff, and apart from the feel of the heads, I can't feel much difference, can't hear much difference. The downside of electric kits being that they will always sound like electric kits. They're never going to sound perfectly natural, but for what I was using it for, it was great, because I just wanted something to practice on, something to sort of build my chops on, and inevitably something to record with, because in Logic you've got USB straight out of the brain unit into your MacBook, and then you can trigger any MIDI that you want. So even if you're just doing samples of random things, you can trigger it with this if you wanted to. The toms are really, really good. All the drums came with Mylar heads, which is the real feel drum heads that Alesis sell it with. The toms are 8-inch, and the kick drum is 2, and the snare is 10-inch. And what I've done with the snare and the kick is I've replaced them with mesh heads. The only downside to that is that I did it a bit half-assed. I didn't have the right materials for what I needed to do it with, so they will be changed back to the Mylar. While it is louder acoustically, the response is much better. You're not missing hits, you're not getting more hits than you should have. There's just so much going on with this kit. It's, keep it original, because that's going to be the easiest way to do things. Every single drum, except for the kick, has a different zone on the rim. So if you hit the center of the drums, you'll get the drum head sound, or whatever you've applied to that particular head. And on the rim, you'll get whatever you've applied to the rim. So for the snare, for example, on my custom sound, I've got the snare head and then a rim shot. Hit them both together, you get proper stick clicks. Toms are all chromatically done, and for the rims, because I don't use tom rims when I'm playing acoustically, I've got things like a cowbell, a splash cymbal, just things that might be useful that I've not quite got enough pads for. I'm using an Iron Cobra 200 pedal. It's a really good pedal. I think I paid £50 for it because it was a shop used one, again in PMT, but it had hardly been used because it had been put onto a left-handed layout, so nobody had actually touched it. So I got it for a £5 cheaper than usual, because they do retail about £55 UK. I do really like it. It is worth getting the Cobra coil. You might think that it's a little bit of an added expense, but the bounce back that you get, I feel anyway that it's a really good thing to have. But that's just me. But I do prefer a couple of other pedals, but I'll do reviews on them at a later stage. The Alesis module can be fed, like I say, into USB, or you've got a couple of outputs. You can either go out the headphones at the front, or you can go out of the left and right output on the back, which means that you can send it out to an amplifier or a PA system. I've got it running through a really simple Akai amp. It's all I need in here, just for sort of getting an idea of what sounds I'm doing, but for the most part I'm using headphones anyway. Like I say, I did have to replace a couple of the clamps for the cymbals when I bought it, but that didn't cost too much. I actually got it direct from PMT for I think £5 each, so I got a couple just in case, and they've not gone through or anything. If you over tighten them, they can pull through because they are just ABS, and if you over tighten where they are, where the screws and the wing nuts are, you can pull through, so be very careful about that if you do go for one of these kits, or if you've got one already and you've not had any breakages, just don't over tighten. But at the same time it's difficult not to, because you've got the cymbals on effectively just a single point, and as you hit them, they're going to want to tilt. But I've got them to the point where they're not tilting, they're not going anywhere, and I've not over tightened them, so I'm quite happy about that. And an added benefit of this is the brain unit actually has an auxiliary input, so you can drum along to tracks and things and still go through the headphones or out through the PA or your amplifier, whatever you're using, and you can drum along to drumless tracks. I never want to pay for drumless tracks, so what I do normally is I just go for anything that's on my iPod, because I've usually got it on me, plug it straight in and just play along to the tracks anyway. It's good doing it that way sometimes, because then you can play exactly how they play it on the original, or you can see how different you can get without sort of having to stick to what they're playing. You've also got MIDI options on here, so you've got MIDI in and MIDI out, so you can go into a proper MIDI interface if you wanted to. Not really something I use, so it's not really something I've bothered to look into. There's a lot of features on the brain unit. You've got a full mixer, so you can change the volumes of everything you've got going on. You can do it on the fly. You can add beats in, you can have accompaniment. There are hundreds and hundreds of drum samples on here. Not even just drum samples, there's some guitar samples, there's some vocal stuff. Anything you can possibly need is in here. But having said that, I was always considering getting the Bluebird package, because you can upgrade through USB from your computer. You can upgrade the sounds in the banks, which means that for £60 you can get the Bluebird kit, which is apparently fantastic. But I never got around to it. Until this point I've never really sort of had the money to just drop 60 quid on sounds, and now unfortunately I'm actually selling this. The reason for that is that I need space for another guitar rack and a guitar workbench, so the drums are going, which is why I'm doing this review now, because I wanted to get it done before they went, but they are going to a good friend of mine, so I'm probably going to end up getting them back for, you know, a bit of use every now and then. And that just about covers it really. What I can do now is sort of give you an example of some of the sounds, how responsive it is, and just sort of let you see how it works.